Hello, beautiful soul, and welcome a blessed and beautiful winter solstice and or Christmas and whatever you celebrate to you. If you are watching this, I would also like to welcome you to some Damsel Divine Mirroring energy artwork that you will be able to see on screen here. This is actually the winter solstice sunrise of 2022. It is perfectly all right, by the way, if you are watching this in another year, because the quantum channeling aspect of this is going to be timeless, visually and audibly timeless. So this video, as I said, is one that I took on the morning sunrise of winter solstice 2022 and then put through my Damsel Divine Mirroring energy art process, which is a form of energy art transmission that can act as focal points for meditation, for activation, etc. And if you are inclined to look and meditate with the imagery that you are seeing, you may find that faces, animals, or different codes and symbols shine through for you to help you tap and tune into higher energies. This, by the way, is something that I do as a service. If you are interested, there are links in the description to my website for custom pieces, as well as to sessions, coaching, teaching, and energy healing with me and more. We'll talk more about that later on in the session, but links are always in the description. And the timeless aspect of what we're going to be going through today is also here in the audible or in the vocal light codes that you will be hearing. We are going to get geeky today and discuss some of the symbolism and esoteric meanings behind solstice and Christmas, and I am so happy for those of you who choose to join me in that. So if you are new here, welcome. My name is Danielle, hashtag damsel at These Enlightened Edits of damseldesigns.com. I am a spiritual advisor and teacher, quantum Sikhem and shamanic energy healer, as well as psychic medium, life coach, energy artist, and more. And in these chat and channel sessions, my guides, and in some cases, some of you present me with a topic and we have a stream of consciousness channeling about it. I invite you also to participate with the light codes and or today's visual light codes to have a stream of consciousness writing session of your own. If you want to get out a journal or the notes app on your phone or favorite device, I am sure that you will also be able to pick up on and receive your own intuitive messages. So let's get started. As I said, today we're going to be geeking out about the winter solstice and some of the esoteric meaning and symbolism. Trigger warning for those of you who may be heavily identified with Christian dogma. We are going to be addressing some things that are older than Christianity and some of the roots that Christianity took on or stemmed from. So if that bothers you, this may not be the chat and channel session for you, but I invite you, as always, to use the link in the description to visit and catch up on with other chat and channel sessions of other timeless and spiritual topics that you may find helpful. So, as I said, we're getting to the roots of some of the solstice origins and the fact that Christmas was strategically, in my research and experience, planted here in this time of the winter solstice. It is summer solstice in the southern hemisphere, but as I am in the northern hemisphere, we're going to be primarily focusing on that today. And there were so many reasons why Christ's birth, which by all accounts and by our best records actually took place more towards spring and summer of the physical year. But when Rome took on Christianity and Catholicism as a religious practice and dogma, it decided to shift the holiday of Christ's birth to the time of winter solstice. Now, this happened with many things becoming amalgamized throughout the traditions, especially because you have to remember Rome was an empire that conquered many lands, and many people throughout the world for thousands of years have celebrated during this time of year the solstice and this holiday celebration because of being so divinely connected with nature and the cosmos. And rather than try to completely stamp out all of the holidays and celebrations that were important, especially important to those of us who know that we are connected to the earth and stars, Rome and Christianity decided to amalgamize or take on and kind of conjoin as much as possible with celebrations that were already occurring and kind of put their own stamp on it. So with Christmas, they did that because there is actually many association with this Christ-like figure throughout the eons. If you've heard me speak on any of this before, you're probably familiar with me addressing the fact that I know the Christ energy to be more of a Christ consciousness, a being of light and a field and dimensional plane of light that has visited Earth many times under many different names, depending, in my opinion, on what the populace needed or what that area or time of the world needed in that period. And so the Christ figure and this story of a divine child or a divine son, S-O-N, but really that was because of son, S-U-N, who visited the earth and was born to the earth of a virgin and then was baptized and started their ministry around age 30, traveled around with 12 disciples or apostles performing miracles, etc. This has been said many times, as well as the story of the figure then getting crucified and after a period of 3 days being reborn. Now, this story mirrors itself over and over again in many forms, many messiahs, if you prefer that term, many of which also have a birth date of December 25th. Most notably and most similarly, in my opinion, is the story of Horus or Heru, the divine child of Isis and Osiris, but also Krishna, Dionysus, Mithras. All of these were heroes, if you like to say, and we get that word hero from Heru or Horus, actually. These were divine figures that were leaders of their time, that were connected as the divine child, and went through all of these patterns of being born of the virgin, being able to perform miracles, dying, and then being resurrected after a period of 3 days. Now, this brings us back around to the significance of winter solstice, because we have this phenomenon where one of the poles of our Earth is actually situated the farthest point that it can be from our sun when it is in its rotation. And because of that, then we go through this period where we follow the star of Bethlehem, which is actually the star of Sirius, because that star then aligns with the 3 kings or the 3 points of stars in the belt of Orion. Now, taking this back to Horus or Heru, Horus is the divine child of Isis and Osiris. Isis is the being of Sirius, or the divine mother figure associated with the star of Sirius, and Osiris is the divine father associated with the star of Orion. And together, they birth this divine child of Horus, and actually Osiris is not present for Horus's birth. Osiris has been killed and is off planet, shall we say, much the same as Christ, who was just born of his divine virginal mother and then raised kind of by surrogate fathers here on the earth. The same sort of thing happened with Horus, because although Isis and Osiris were betrothed, and they did consummate their union, Osiris was killed and resurrected temporarily by Isis's magic in order for them to conceive Horus in a different way. So he was not conceived completely virginal, as some of the other traditions prefer to state the story, but he was created and conceived not out of traditional sex. apologies if that word bothers you. This was a divine union, a divine magical happening that happened in terms of his conception. Now, depending on which version of the divine child that you follow, you'll find different ways in which they came into being, but there was always something out of the norm about how their mother became pregnant. Krishna has a very unique story of his incarnation. They all have their own ways in which they became conceived. Now, after the conception, when we get to this point of the winter solstice and this alignment again in the earth, winter solstice is the longest night of the year. We have the most hours of darkness within the year. In my area of the world, it kind of borders usually upon 16 hours of darkness. So that is the majority of the day. Now, the divine child, or the divine son, SUNNSON, of God, is illustrated by this sun, by the rays of the sun, which also translate, if you are a follower of Jesus or Jesu, of Christ, as the thorns, the crown of thorns. And this illustration that we often get of the circle with the cross is associated behind the Christ figure in much of the older depictions of him, not because he was killed upon the cross, but because that is a symbol of the astrology of the sun and the sun's rays being behind him, being beholden to him, and also of the astrology of the 12 signs of astrology, or the 12 disciples or apostles that followed him and helped him with his mission on earth. Horus, Dionysus, Mithras, all, by the way, had 12 disciples or apostles. And again, apologies if you are very into Christian or Catholicism dogma and that triggers you, but you can look these things up yourself. In my opinion, it doesn't speak to the Christ figure being less powerful. It actually speaks to the Christ figure as being more powerful, as being a being that has been able to come back and demonstrate these patterns over and over again until we on earth finally get it, or enough of us with the 100th monkey effect finally get it. And in my opinion, I've said this before, the resurrection, or the second coming, even though it's more than the second, is not supposed to be about a physical being needing to come back. The way that the majority of the plans would like us to go, from what I've seen as an Akashic Records reader and healer as well, is that the Christ consciousness is supposed to be the next coming, with more of us becoming aware of all of these myriad and multidimensional connections between all things, and us tapping into that Christ or Krishna consciousness within ourselves, within our heart, within our pineal gland, and awakening that within each of us, rather than needing a physical being as one illustration of that to come back. It's more so the majority of us being able to access and tap into and connect to that part of ourself, as we are all divine children of the one greatest source, in my opinion, which comes forward and illustrates itself as many things, under many faces, under many forms and names. So you can resonate with that opinion or not. That is totally up to you. But I'm going to continue speaking on the story and the symbolism here, and I hope that that brings something forward to you about your beliefs, whether they are set in stone or whether they are open to shifting. I believe that we create the best lives and religious practices possible when we have access to the most information, and this information has always been such a revelation to me. So I hope this is new for some of you, and for those of you who already know it, thank you for being here and listening to my opinion and experience on the story. So as we continue there, the winter solstice significance is also that during this point, when we are the farthest from the the sun, when we have the most darkness that there is. The sun appears during this period from usually the 22nd, 23rd, and 24th of December in the Northern Hemisphere, although we do celebrate solstice usually on the 21st of December. It can vary a little bit, starting from sometimes the 18th all the way up to the 24th, 25th, when we are actually in this proper alignment with the great central sun and with Sirius and the 3 stars of Orion lying up in the Southern Cross, or Southern Crux, as it's called in astronomy. And so if you look that up, that is actually a cross. And in this period of 3 days, whenever that happens to line up and be, when we have the most darkness, the sun sets at a much earlier time in the day, or Set, who was actually the enemy of Horus, or Heru, his evil, quote unquote, or dark, chaotic uncle that he fought to regain his and his father's throne. And the sun sets at an early time, as I said, and then it appears to stay stagnant for 3 days at the same point in the sky. Now, normally we are constantly in motion, constantly moving. We'll have much more variation. But during this period of 3 days during solstice, it is dead at that area, that particular place in the sky for these 3 days, which line up with the Southern Crux, or Southern Cross of astronomy. So this is where we get the phenomenon of Christ, or the divine son or divine child, dying on the cross for 3 days. Then on December 25th, the sun starts to move again. Thus, it is reborn. And from that point going forward, we have more daylight hours. Typically, the resurrection is not completely celebrated or honored until the spring equinox or Easter period, because it's only at that point when we really can see the light having more shine during the day. So that's why we celebrate it then. There is even more symbolism in this because Christ, of course, is born of Virgin Mary, who I love very much and associate with Isis as well. I believe she has many forms and names as Divine Mother, but she is a Virgo in much of her tradition as Mary. Now, Virgo translates to virgin, so thus we have the Virgin Mary. And Virgo and virgin is also significant in the story of Christ, because Bethlehem, where Christ is said to have been born when his parents followed the star of Bethlehem, or the star of Sirius. Bethlehem translates to house of bread. Now, house of bread is another alternative knowing of the constellation of Virgo, or the constellation of the Virgin, who is sometimes depicted as this virginal aspect holding a shaft of wheat for the time of harvest that happens in August and September. Mother Mary's birthday is known to be celebrated around this time of year, and immediately before that, we usually celebrate the goddess Isis's birthday as well in July. So this is where we have all this connection of house of bread being Bethlehem and the Virgin. So Christ, or that divine son, is not necessarily born in a physical place of Bethlehem. Could be, if you believe that, that's fine, but is also being told and shown to us that Christ, the divine child, is born to the Virgin, to the Virgo, to the house of bread, to this place in the sky, as well as to the physical place, if you need to believe that. But the physical place of Bethlehem and house of bread is also directing us to the sky. So much of our tradition is directing us to the sky. And if you are a starseed like I am, you probably see much more relevance in that as well. But that's a topic probably for another time. Although I know many of us starseeds have very, very, very strong association constellations with Sirius and Orion. And these three aspects of the constellation of Virgo, the star of Sirius or the star of Bethlehem, again, another tying Mother Mary and Isis together, is so associated and so important to this story, to becoming Christ or Krishna conscious, and to acknowledging the astronomy, the astrology, all of these things and all of these aspects of us. So whether you resonate as a starseed or not, I hope that this information has been enlightening to you so that you can see that no matter what tradition we have here on earth, no matter what dogma we have here on earth, pretty much any point of information can be dug deep and gotten to more roots of, and can be illustrated over and over again, having multiple meanings, pointing us in multiple directions, all stemming from the same point of truth, just told in different forms and facets, depending on how we will most get it, utilize it until the point we are able to see and utilize more of it in our full power and in our full connection with these ways of light. Now, although we're talking about the ways of light, if you have memories of Orion, like I do, you probably also resonate with some aspects of darkness. And of course, the winter solstice is a period of more darkness here in our day on Earth. It is a time to address your shadows, in my opinion, and it is a time before that rebirth happens on December 25th to see which parts of you, your shadow, your personality, your matrix, your reality, whatever you like to say, are ready to be disposed of or shed, like a snake shedding its skin. Which parts of you have outgrown. This period in particular, when I'm at the time of this recording, has felt like a huge time of things that are dead, things that are no longer working. Now, some people are reevaluating those things and seeing if they will be on quote unquote the list to be reborn on December 25th. But something I've seen with my clients and others I know is that some people are reconnecting or attempting reconnection with things that have already kind of died off and are failing to see that sometimes that reconnection is not necessarily possible or not healthy anymore. This is not a failure, by the way. That's just the word that came to mind while I was channeling. Probably some people feel like things have failed, but really things have just been outgrown. There is old growth. There is shed happening. So if you are feeling like it's time to reconnect with things, or if you're trying to force a reconnection or feel like you're being called back to something, and then you play with it a bit, you try the reconnection, and then you see, yeah, it's awkward now. It's not the same. It's not necessarily working anymore. Then it's up to you to decide, do you want that to go on your list of things to be reborn starting December 25th and in the year to come, calendar year to come, or do you want to let it die? Do you want to let it transform into something new and some new kind of energy for you? Now, if this thing is a relationship, you have to take an extra consideration into mind, which is that if you do want it to be reborn with you, if you do want to take that forward or pick it up and go forward with it again, you have to be in that with the other person making that decision as well, whether it's consciously or unconsciously talked about or not. In order for relationships to be reborn and go forward with us, the other person has to make that decision as well. This is especially true for any of you who have had karmic relationships and have come to the point where your karma is paid in full with these people, these persons or groups. If you are going to shift and continue relationship beyond having karma with them, both parties or both groups need to make that decision to go forward and have a new relationship now, which is not completely built on the foundation of karma. For more on that, you can check out a previous chat and channel session that I have about soul groups. But that is something that I'm finding particularly resonant this solstice, and in any solstice when you are called to listen to this again, it may be relevant for you as well. So things that you may want to celebrate solstice in doing is sort of about the midway point of that level of darkness, you may want to do something to call back and re-experience your light and honor the light of the divine sun, of the divine child, of the great central sun, of your higher power, of your Christ figure, whatever that looks like to you, or to your goddess, your star figure. Do something that calls back the light. Now, that could be a visualization, that can be a prayer, that can be the lighting of a candle, or the lighting of some incense. It really doesn't matter, and you don't necessarily need physical tools in order to do this. It's all about you and your practice and what you may need to feel that your working is working for you. And so you can calculate, you can see what time the sun sets on the day or days of solstice, and then what time it rises the next morning, and find about the halfway point to the best of your ability. I know many of us are not mathematicians. And at that halfway point, set an alarm and do something that feels resonant and relevant for you in terms of calling back the light. Now, before you do this, and before you do that honoring of the light, which is a form of welcoming the rebirth, you may also want to take some time to write down, journal with, pray about, or do some other aspect of releasement work to release yourself of the shadows which are no longer serving you. Now, I believe much in Carl Jung kind of tradition that the shadow is not our enemy and is in fact an important part of us and power source of us. And so it's also really helpful to do shadow integration. We're not necessarily disowning parts of ourself or our shadow. What I like to do in this is shed beliefs that have been shadowed or that have been powering the shadow or ruling over us through the shadow. We're not actually, in my opinion, shedding our shadow in itself. We're kind of removing those lenses or those beliefs that have been clouding it up and clouding up the lens of our perception. So that is my personal practice and opinion. I know that last night I went through a practice of like that for myself. You may want to write some things down and burn the paper. Please always be fire safe if you are doing something with fire. Or you may want to bury the paper, whatever feels right and resonant for you to fully release. That is what you do. And there are tons of different materials of other ways that you can celebrate and honor solstice. I particularly like to utilize as much of the daylight hours as possible. I am much more a sun worshiper than a moon worshiper, or at least I have become so again more in these past recent years. But if you resonate with the moon, that's fine too. Either way, we're all connected with the sun, and the moon gets its light. The moon is a lens for light, rather, from the source of the sun, and even further beyond that, from the source of the great central sun. So any of these practices can work for you, whether you are a moon worshiper or a sun worshiper, whatever you resonate with most heavily. We are all connected to this time because we are all here on earth looking at the sun, which feeds life and light to everything that we experience here. And we are all watching it symbolically die on these 3 days for the cross and then be reborn. Now, I find this story of the astronomy and the astrology and the resonance that it's had over and over again with these kings of kings, which is a name that was known not only from Christ, but also Horus or Heru, Dionysus, Mithras, so many of them took on this moniker. And this symbol of the King of Kings and watching this aspect of it be reborn can also be a wonderful way for us to encourage our own rebirth. Now, all of our cells in our body need to go through rebirth, and our consciousness, in my experience as an energy reader and healer, goes through many, many periods of rebirth or next levels of awakening. So if you meet anyone, or if you yourself perhaps use the term awakened, I feel you would probably be in for a kind of rude awakening, because we continuously go through layers of awakening. We're not meant to be stagnant. We're not meant to stay at one level of existence. And even on the other side, from how I've worked with spirit on both sides of life, we continue to grow and expand and evolve. And so we are continuing to awaken to new layers of ourselves. And that's why it's helpful to be able to shed the beliefs that no longer serve you. And after you do so, to then set your intentions for what you want going forward in life, what you want for the year to come. What do you want your next version of you to be? I hope that this story and this tradition and these histories have been enlightening to you today in terms of allowing you to look at some beliefs that you may have long held, some maybe patriarchal or dogmatic beliefs that may have been intrusive on your ability to be intuitive and to tap into the full energies of today or of this time, and the ways that this energy can be used to empower you more, which is so much what my work is about, empowering the self. And then once we are more empowered ourselves, seeing how we can expand that light onto others in a healthy, consensual, and respectful way. And so if you found this resonant, if you found new information here, or if you just liked spending this time with me, please remember to give this a like so that the algorithm knows that you like it and spreads it to others. If you would like to share this information with others and share the link to this content, I would be very grateful for that as well. If you are not a subscriber already, please subscribe so that you can tune into future chat and channel sessions and other spiritual and enlightening and fun things that I like to share on my channel and on my pages. There are links to my other socials that you'll find in the description. And if you're called to expand and enhance your energy and would like to work with me, you can find my website, Damsel Designs, DAMCL Designs.com, linked in the description as well. There you will be able to purchase quantum and Akashic Records reading sessions with me, energy art, other ways I utilize my energy and offerings, and more. For those of you who are ready to go even beyond session work, I invite you to use the link in the description and or on my website to contact me about my select spots for quantum, Sikhem, and shamanic energy healing or life and consciousness coaching. This is where we can really get one-on-one with you and your soul's needs to help you enhance your energy, address and heal your patterns or your shadow, and rise to design more of the life that you love. I would love to work with more of you in this capacity, especially as we enter a new calendar year. So be sure to use that link to contact me so that we can talk about creating for you a custom energy healing package or advanced coaching option. As I said, if you would like to tune into other chat and channel sessions where we address so many things, empath narcissist polarity, different aspects of mindfulness, mental health, esotericism, and spirituality, you can tune into the chat and channel sessions playlist, which is also linked in the bio. And if this or any of my other free and public works have been helpful to you and you feel called and drawn and able to support the channel, you can do so through all amounts appreciated energy exchange or donations through paypal.me/DeesEnlightenedEdits or the donate links that are in the description as well. That is not a requirement, but it is very helpful to support my works and energies as I put more of this work out there publicly. Thank you so much for being here, for being you, for tuning into this information with me. If you have a topic that you would like to suggest for a future chat and channel session, feel free to leave that in the comments and I will take it into consideration, or leave your questions there as well. I love interacting with you. I am going to close the chat and channel session here. I am wishing you and your loved ones a blessed and beautiful solstice and holiday season, whatever holiday that looks like for you. And I will see you next time with Love, Light, and Light Codes. Love, Danielle. #Damsel at DeesEnlightenedEdits of DamselDesigns.com.